I want to talk about the iPad Pro. This particular review is of the 9.7-inch variety. I've had it for several weeks, and I think I can give you a pretty good discussion on this device. So basically, the too long didn't read version of this review, if you're a Reddit person, it's the best iPad I've ever used. And this is kind of like an obvious conclusion. I mean, it's the newest iPad, it has the most features, it's the most powerful. So obviously it's going to be the best to use, but is it something that's worth the price tag? It starts at $599, the most expensive iPad entry point ever since it was originally announced by Steve Jobs. So, this is a small, very sleek device. It looks very similar to the iPad Air and Air 2 before it. The first difference, though, is the display. So it's still a 9.7-inch display, still a Retina display, but there are a plethora of improvements over the iPad Air and Air 2. It's vivid, bright, it's impressively non-reflective. Again, I'm coming from an iPad 3rd generation, the first Retina display model. It's significantly better, and it's a lot easier to use both outdoors as well as inside when light's just going to shine through the windows. I think the biggest feature of this display is the True Tone technology, though. Basically what that does is it uses the ambient light sensors on the device to adjust the display to match the ambient light in the room. Similar to how any sort of physical thing like a piece of paper would kind of look differently depending on the lighting in the room. It's something that you didn't think of before, but now when I hop over to my iPhone or my MacBook Air, which does not have that technology, I really wish that it did, and I really think that the True Tone tech that's in this display is extremely cool and useful, and it's something that I think will eventually come to all Apple displays, like I kind of alluded to before, the Mac line as well as the iPhone line, and I look forward to that. The next big thing I want to talk about is the camera. This is the best camera tech that there has been in an iPad. It uses the iPhone 6s camera tech. This video is actually being recorded on the iPad Pro 4K setting. So the FaceTime camera is a 5 megapixel FaceTime HD camera. It works incredibly well. And actually, I think for a device like this, having a solid front-facing camera is very important. I find myself more and more doing video chats, and I find that having this more advanced video camera technology to be very important. On the other hand, again, this is being recorded on the iPad Pro, but I don't find a rear camera on a tablet of this size to be incredibly necessary. I see people sometimes at events and things holding their iPads to record. I mean, certainly it's better to have good camera tech than not. This is a 12 megapixel rear-facing camera that captures 4K, but is that something that's going to be make or break, or something that I really recommend people use their iPads for? Probably not. You kind of look a little silly. And also, there's a camera hump on the back, which I'm not a fan of at all. It's also on the 6 and 6S, and I don't like it. It makes me wonder, Apple, why are you cutting corners? But anyway, that's the camera tech. It's very advanced. It's better than the iPads before it. The next big thing, obviously, with the tablet, besides the camera and then the display that I want to talk about, probably the biggest feature or the biggest aspect of this device is speed. So is it fast? Yes, it's blisteringly fast. It has 2 gigabytes of RAM, so you can open multiple browser tabs. You don't need to reload. You can use multitasking, and you can get between apps, and they don't have to refresh because of the speed and the RAM. There's no stuttering when you use picture-in-picture mode, and I've demoed that before, and I know that's not an exclusive feature to the iPad Pro, but certainly it's going to work better than any other model, both in my testing and theoretically just based on the tech, the CPU and RAM that's inside. Kind of a question mark, it's 2 gigabytes of RAM versus 4 that's in the 12.9-inch older brother iPad Pro. Again, theoretically that's a bummer, but I haven't really noticed any problems in regard to the RAM difference during use. So there's that. Because of the power, it's actually replaced my laptops for certain tasks. I've done a lot more mobile purchases and research, both for work as well as just for purchases that I'm making right on the iPad, because it's very easy now with the speed to quickly jump between multiple web pages, to have a web page open and notes open at the same time. As it becomes more and more powerful, you're obviously going to see a transition to the iPad being able to replace multiple feature sets. Kind of on the other side of that, though, is battery life. This slightly disappointed me. Certainly, you'll still get, the full day of usage out of it. And I think part of it is because of the new tech that's in here, and part of it's because tangential function of the speed is that, you know, I find myself just using my iPad a lot more than I was using my iPad third generation. The iPad third generation kind of just became a media consumption device before I went to sleep because it was really slow to do any kind of task. This iPad, like I said, is replacing a lot more functions, so I have to charge the device, I notice, more often than the older iPad. On paper and from the reviews that I've read online, it's not as good as the iPad Air 2 by a significant margin. But again, you know, you're still going to be able to get multiple days of use out of this iPad. It's just a matter of it not being the best iPad on the market in terms of battery life. That would still go to the iPad Air 2. Kind of just a couple last thoughts that I wanted to give you on this device. Yeah, no, I've experienced some random reboots, app crashes, and freezes. Like I said, overall, the speed and performance is extremely good. However, I've noticed random lockups. For instance, if I'm using Safari, I've noticed it lock up when I'm trying to look at all my tabs and switch between tabs, and I have to actually close out of the app, force it closed, and start again. And then there's no problem, but I've noticed it lock up. I've also had issues where it's just randomly rebooted for no reason. I've had issues where I'm scrolling through my Twitter timeline, and it just freezes, and again I have to double click, close out of the app manually, and start again. These instances have nothing to do with processor intensive activities. It's not like I'm taxing the iPad and it's randomly locking up. There's just some sort of glitch in the software, I would presume, that's causing these lockups, and that's really stinks. But on the other hand, because it's a software problem, it's something that could be fixed in later versions of iOS 9 and 10, etc. The other last thing I kind of want to mention, the speakers. Apple took this from the bigger iPad line, bigger iPad Pro line, and now has 4 stereo speakers on it. It's extremely loud. It's extremely interesting to notice that the way I rotate, it alters how my music is being played, bass versus treble, etc. Or even if I'm watching, a Major League Baseball game, streaming it on an MLB at bat, it's really cool to kind of notice that there's a new focus on audio fidelity. So, should you get this iPad? I think at the end of the day, that's the big question. I put a lot of weight personally on future-proofing. If I buy a device, either I want it to last for a long time, or when I want to upgrade the next year, I want to have something that's future-proofed and I'll be able to get a good return when I resell it. That's something, so that's kind of why I did not go with the iPad Air 2. I think that if you are looking for the most powerful device, if you're looking for something with Apple Pencil support, which is unique to the iPad Pro line, or if you're interested in future-proofing, I think the iPad Pro is a great device for you. Like I said at the beginning of this review, it's by far the best iPad that I've ever used. If you're not that interested in those things, you're not interested in having the newest product on the market, the iPad Air 2 is still a fantastic device and actually is going to have some benefits such as extended battery life. But overall, that is my review of the iPad Pro 9.7-inch. I really, really like it. I'm extremely happy with my choice, and I'd love to hear your feedback on this device in the comments below. Thanks for watching.